Okay, guys, we're starting to move into a new direction. And so last week I got into bystanders versus good Samaritans. And in bystanders versus good Samaritans, you're asked to make a judgment. And I gave you an example uh, of a particular case, Kitty Genovese, or Kitty Genovese, and told you about what happened with her. And I ask you a critical question: can you legislate morality? Can you legislate that someone has to step in and aid someone um, who is dying um, or being attacked? So we're beginning to deal with issues of life and death. Now, we're going to take that a little bit further today. Not only are we going to ask, can you legislate issues of life and death? Today, we're going to begin to ask the question, what happens if you're forced to choose who lives and who dies? So I've got a quite a moving piece of audio that I'm going to ask you to watch. And I'm going to post a couple of questions um, for the audio. Um, just one moment. So I'm going to post a couple of questions for you uh, on uh, on Canvas here, and you're going to have to listen to at least the first half of this audio if you are able to answer one or two of these questions. Uh, I will warn you, it is difficult to listen to. It is painful. The idea here is the the um, the program is entitled Triage, and it traces uh, the aftermath of a storm. I'm not going to give it away right now. I'm going to let you listen to it. Many of you would have been very young children when this storm hit. And so it traces uh, the, the aftermath of this storm in this particular city and in this hospital. And it is excruciating to hear um, the stories of people as they grappled with how to decide who would live and who would die. Um, and you think, well, I'll never be in that situation. Well, the people working in this hospital never thought they would be in that situation either. And you might even make the argument, well, there's somebody above me. I'll never be in that position to make those decisions, but you don't know that as of right now. And so when we're asked to triage, we're asked to assess a particular situation. Um, when you go to the hospital, if you've had to go to the emergency room, one of the first places you report to is the triage. And the triage, of course, nowadays in the age of COVID, they're going to check your temp to see if you're running a fever. Um, but triage is going to assess how desperately you need help. Now, this is critical because now we're moving from looking at justice as something that might be meted out as part of punishment to looking at justice as as how resources are distributed. How are resources distributed to people in a time of need? And so when you triage someone, you realize we have a finite resource here. And you say, this is a hospital, they've got unlimited resources. No, the most critical resource that a hospital has is its personnel, is its doctors, its nurses, its other medical personnel. And so when they triage you, they're trying to prioritize who lives and who dies. Literally, it is a system, and triage. It comes from I believe it's from a French word. I think they talk about this in the audio clip I want you to listen to. And it is, you are making a judgment, who will survive this? And when you when you go into the emergency room, they triage you. That's why it's so critical that you not overwhelm emergency rooms. That was the whole problem, or that has been the whole problem with this COVID situation, is that hospitals were being bombarded, they were being overwhelmed. And it wasn't just one person who needed to be at the top of the list. It was everyone who needed to be at the top of the list. And so when you triage, you're making that assessment. How sick is this person? And what are the chances that this person can survive if we tell this doctor, this is the first person you should see? And so what happens then when you go into the emergency room, you've got a broken arm. It's, it's like this. And you're screaming, ah, holy shit, I'm in pain. Yeah, you are in pain. You need help. But is your twisted, broken compound fracture more important than the guy who just came in with a massive heart attack? Which in that situation should you treat first? Triage asks that question. There are other ways to triage as well. Should you treat a 19-year-old who was being foolish on a skateboard, trying to do a jump or a trick for the first time, and ended up with an arm like this, who has no children, probably been drinking? I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Or should you treat the mother who has 2 young children? So here again, you're triaging, but you're using different criteria. You're not using the physical criteria as much as you are looking at if we're going to save someone right now, do we save the young, unmarried, foolish person, or do we save the responsible mother with 2 children? So it's still triaging. You're still trying to decide where you're going to apply your resources, but you're doing it in a vastly different way. You're looking at it in a significantly different way. Because again, the most important resource that we're talking about here is not bandages and sutures and band-aids. It's not who gets the saline solution. It's not things like that. Within any hospital, there's a finite number of doctors who can treat you at a particular time. And in a massive crisis, like the one that you're going to hear about in this audio clip, or like during our COVID situation, the number of doctors is limited, but they're even more limited sometimes in a massive crisis like this. Maybe they can't get to the hospital for some reason. Maybe a number of them are sick as well, which was one of the problems with COVID, that nurses were getting sick. So one of the most important resources then is stretched very thin. How then do you allocate who gets what treatment? This is where ethics, this is where our moral reasoning comes into play. You might approach it It's my duty to save all lives. Yeah, okay, it's your duty, but you can't do it. So then what how do you assess the situation? Well, I'm going to do what is going to make the most people happy. Well, in a situation like in a hospital, you have no idea. You have no clue. Okay, this person is a musician. Makes a lot of people happy. He's world renowned musician. Yeah, strums that guitar and sings. But the other one is a poet. Oh my God, such a beautiful writes such beautiful poetry. So which one brings the greatest happiness to the world as opposed to the other one? Who's a dearly loved, saintly grandmother who has a dozen grandchildren and great grandchildren. And you might say, well, that's just, 12 plus your children, so we're talking about 20 people. Yes, but what about all the generations that will come after that? Who is going to bring the greatest happiness? So in this situation, you know, greatest happiness, I don't know, um, which is teleological, by the way, versus uh, deontological, doing your duty. Is there a way in this situation to make that decision? What factors do you weigh as you're making this decision about who's going to live and who's going to die? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop my lecture now, and I'm going to post you a question or two about this, and you'll have to listen to the audio clip. It's I believe it's from NPR Radio Lab, um, and you'll have to listen to it to answer a couple of these questions, and then I'll have another part of this lecture for you on the other side.